I'll say artistic pictures of children, most of them with diseases.
Really, Brooke?
Yes, really.
I mean,
yes,
really,
really.
you're
Propaganda
saying
pictures of these people. You never see pictures of adults. And famine is not selective, Peter. You can't have a child who's starving and then the mother is
Brooke, are we really,
overweight or the brother
Brooke,
is fully fed.
Brooke, the picture of Eviatar David was horrifying. Are we really debating whether people are starving in Gaza?
Well, that was something. Hey, everybody. Mike here from the Can We Please Talk podcast. This is the first time I've ever done this in the 5-year history of this show and the countless television appearances that myself and my co-host Nick Saveri have done, whether it be political panels, adding commentary and analysis, because this was something that not only is it personal to me, but obviously something is playing out in the news, right? Which is the war in Gaza and, the potential genocide that's occurring, the starvation, the famine that's occurring, according to multiple agencies, Israel and the hostages still not being released. Not all of them. There's still at least 100 or so that are still outstanding. Bibi's recent comments, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent comments about taking over the Gaza Strip, what this would do. So I wanted to react a little bit and give you guys some background and context of this segment that you may have seen making the rounds across all the social media platforms. And it featured myself. It featured Peter Beinart, who's an author who you'll hear in just a second. He's also been making the rounds with his new book. You had Brooke Goldstein, who's a human rights lawyer, and I use that word very loosely, and you'll find out in just a second. Bakari Sellers, who's a CNN political commentator, and then Batya Ungar-Sargun, who you may or may not seen. She's been on Real Time with Bill Maher. She co-hosts some stuff on News Nation. And John Berman was filling in for Abby Phillip on CNN NewsNight. We did this segment here. I'm going to play a little bit of each portion of the segment, and then I'm going to stop to give some reaction and commentary. So first, let's start with the beginning. This is how the segment started, with John introducing the topic.
All right, for weeks, months even, Israel has been under pressure over starvation in Gaza, civilian deaths in Gaza, and indiscriminate bombings in Gaza. But tonight, Israel may be on the verge of a full takeover of Gaza. Just hours from now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is said to be ordering a full conquest of the Strip after talks with Hamas broke down. A source tells CNN the IDF objects to the move, but Israeli media cites senior officials close to Netanyahu saying if the IDF chief of staff does not agree, he should resign. Joining us at our fifth seat at the table is Peter Beinart, author of Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza.
All right, so before we start playing here, you're going to see that it's the five of us. Peter just got introduced. So let me give some background here because a lot of people don't know how this works. So, I got to the studio around 9 o'clock or so. We film at 10 o'clock. They always tell us to get there about a half hour early so that way we can get makeup done. And then we go into the studio maybe about 12 to 15 minutes early so everybody can get mic'd up, everybody can get their waters. If the anchor has to do a read or something like that, sometimes they do like a little bit early so they can do a sign off early so everybody can go home a little bit early. So that's normally what happens, right? So when I got there, I went into one dressing room area because I brought my clothes I wanted to change. Batya was already there and we said hello to her. I had not seen Peter at all. I had not seen John Berman at all. He was actually filming earlier in the day. So he may have been home because he was doing the morning shift. Then he's got to come back. Bakari Sellers walked in later on, 9:15 or so. So those are the only two people I had really seen. I hadn't seen Peter because Peter was our second segment. So I didn't get a chance to meet him. I hadn't met him. I've seen his interview with Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. If you haven't seen that, go check that out. And Brooke Goldstein, who I know of the Lawfare Project where she works at and is a founder because I've debated some other folks from the Lawfare Project on other topics, not necessarily Israel and Gaza, but I never met her, don't know her. The producer sends you an email with who's going to be on the panel, and sometimes, I'll look up that person or sometimes I already know who they are and I don't have to look them up. Her name escaped me, forgot to look her up. And then when we walked into the studio at around 9:47, 9:48, and we're all sitting down, she didn't pop up yet. She came in maybe about 2 or 3 minutes after we all showed up. So I introduced myself. Again, never heard of her, didn't look her up, didn't know that she was a selective human rights attorney. And again, I use selective strongly in that sentence. You'll find out in just a second why. So I didn't know anything about this lady, right? And I didn't know what was going to come out of her mouth. More importantly, what she was going to read from that paper that's sitting right in front of her. You'll hear that in just a second. But that's the background and context, because I think people think that we're all in a green room, we're all hanging out, we're all, BSing. And that's just not the way it is in the New York offices, because in New York, they don't really have like the DC CNN studios has like a big green room area where everybody sits. Whereas in New York, it's kind of siloed. There's like a little kitchen. There's like one room that fits one or two people. There's another room that fits one or two people. And then you go down a long hallway and it's studios. And then you got the makeup chairs as soon as you first walk in. So there's no real way to like talk to everybody unless you go to the kitchen and hang out. Some people like to stay in their own corners, read their own notes, do some preliminary homework before they go out there and babble like she's about to in just a second that you're going to hear. So that's the background and context. We all don't know each other. Some of us get to know each other off camera. And then some of us have already had arguments with people on camera, and they tend to sound a little bit more like this. So let me play now the clip of Peter getting asked a question that he just heard John say. And now Peter's going to give his response and Brooke is going to chime in. And I'll cut in at different parts here to kind of dispel some of the things that she says. So take a listen.
So full occupation, Peter, what would that do? What would that change?
I hope, but I also think this is a bluff. The Israeli people do not want this. I think what Netanyahu is trying to do is trying to bluff and hope that will provide the ceasefire on terms that he wants. Because a full conquest of Gaza would be an utter catastrophe, a catastrophe for the Palestinians of Gaza who are already suffering immensely. And it would not save any hostages. It would actually put them in greater peril. And it would not destroy Hamas. Israel has been promising that it would destroy Hamas since October of 2023. And Hamas is still there. So this would be a catastrophe, but I suspect it won't happen, thank God.
Brooke, would it?
Well, look, whether it happens or not, frankly, the truth is Israel should have never left Gaza, because before 2005, we did not have a terrorist state. We had a booming economy. We had equality for the sexes. We didn't have gays being thrown off rooftops. But when Israel dragged every last man, woman, and child out of Gaza.
All right, so let's stop right there for a second, because Israel withdrew its military personnel in 2005. That is correct. If you go to NPR and you listen to an episode of All Things Considered back in August 30, of 2005, the Israeli army withdrew its last soldier from the Gaza Strip. And there's talks about people celebrating in the streets and stuff like that. However, Israel still controlled the seas, right? The entry points from Gaza into Israel. Obviously, it's on the border. So it still controlled all of those things. So really, Palestinians had their home and no Israeli soldiers inside of Gaza, as she kind of mentions. But she's leaving out some key details there about the border being controlled by the Israeli military and the waterways being controlled as well by Israel. So those are like two kind of big things that she's leaving out. It would be equivalent to, like the borders here in the U.S. with U.S. and Canada and Mexico, right? You can't leave that out. Who controls the border on what aspect? So that's the background and context for that. Let's play a little bit more of this and let's see if I can dispel a little bit more of what she's saying.
And exhumed the dead bodies because they knew what Hamas would do with it. We had a terror state, and that's a big mistake, and the world is yet to admit that. And the real question is, why is the world preventing Gazans from leaving Gaza? Why are they insisting that they remain as human hostages for Hamas and as civilian human shields? And the third point really is, are they refugees or are they not refugees? Because if Gazans are Palestinian refugees, then Gaza is not their home and they should be relocated so that they are not used by Hamas as human shields. If Gaza is their home, then the entire premise upon which the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict is based and the right of return is false. The only people being deliberately starved in Gaza are the hostages right now. You look at Evitar David. He looks like a concentration camp survivor who was forced to dig his own grave. When the body of Eden Yerushalmi, after she was murdered, was returned, she was 70 pounds. Contrast that to the pictures, these, I'll say, artistic pictures of children, most of them with diseases.
Really, Brooke?
Yes, really.
I mean,
yes,
really,
really.
you're
Propaganda
saying what,
pictures
the,
of these
what,
people.
what,
You
what,
never see
the
pictures of adults.
The pictures of,
and famine is not selective, Peter. You can't have a child who's starving and then the mother is
Brooke, are we really,
overweight or the brother
Brooke,
is fully fed.
Brooke, the picture of Eviatar David was horrifying. Are we really debating whether people are starving in Gaza?
Okay, first off, she said a lot there. Okay. This is, and you're going to hear my frustration in just a second as I'm frustrated right now doing this. But what I said to her, and it's going to be coming up, is there's not enough time to dispel everything you just said right there. Because according to the UN, right, according to Doctors Without Borders, and you're seeing the articles here in parallel as I'm talking, mass starvation is spreading across Gaza. Colleagues of Doctors Without Borders that have traveled there to help in the medical fight are saying that they're running low on AIDS, that they're running low on food. Okay. The UN has already said that there's an epic humanitarian catastrophe happening in Gaza. According to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Platform, 2 out of 3 famine thresholds have been reached in Gaza. There's plummeting food consumption and acute malnutrition. And according to one UN-backed food security expert, he said, this was back in the end of July in 2024, the worst case scenario of famine is currently playing out in Gaza. There's over 20,000 treated for acute malnutrition. There's been 16 deaths reported. Again, this was back towards the end of July. There's more since then. 70% of Gaza's infrastructure has been destroyed, and there's a displacement crisis right now going on. With the safe zones now cover less than 12% of the strips. Remember, the safe zones are where people can go and get food and not get attacked. We'll get into that in just a second. So the other thing that she mentioned there, which is so asinine, about you can't have one kid be starving and another kid not be, looking healthy. I can't believe I even have to mention this, dispel this. This is a really vile person. Like, let's just be honest. Like, I can't believe human rights attorney popped up in her bio. Like, if you're using Brooke Goldstein out there, if you're watching this and you're using Brooke Goldstein to help secure your human rights, you're an idiot. Like, it's just real simple. There's no other way to say that. Like, she has selective human rights because she only cares about ones that, are Jewish. Like, let's be honest. I mean, you see the name of the book, and Jewish Hatred. She doesn't care about anything else. She has said in different interviews and conferences that she doesn't consider a Palestinian person to be a real person. Those are her words, not mine. You can look up the clips. They exist out there. So anyway, and again, by the way, common sense here. It's horrific. What happened on October 7th. It's horrific, the hostage taking. It's horrific to see that video of that hostage, which you'll hear me say in a second, who was walking in the tunnel by himself, that Hamas recorded this video of him. He looked like he was like 70, 75 pounds. He looked terrible. Like, it looked terrible. It's horrific. It's horrific that his government is not doing the most to get him out. All they're doing is killing innocent women and children in the process and not even trying to get him out. As a matter of fact, before I even go a little bit further, let's play a little bit of what Bibi said on Fox News just before, because some of the information in this video is a little bit dated. And since then, Bibi has said, and his cabinet agrees, that they should fully take control of the Gaza Strip like they did in 2005, which I just mentioned under Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was the last time where they had military troops controlling all the Gaza Strip, all 26 miles. Listen to what he said with Bill Hemmer.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating the destruction of Israel. That's what we want to do. We want to liberate ourselves and liberate the people of Gaza from the awful terror of Hamas. And you were in the Gaza Strip today. You met Palestinians who are fighting Hamas because finally they see that they have a future. They can rid themselves of this awful tyranny that not only holds our hostages, but holds 2 million Palestinians in Gaza hostage. That's got to end.
So, I mean, he gave, again, I'm not a Middle East relations, foreign relations expert guy. I'm not going to pretend to be. All I'm trying to do is unite humanity. We've been working here at the show with Project Unite Humanity, projectuh.org. I mentioned it in the clip coming up. but that's the organization. They're based down here in South Florida. They've helped other war-torn areas with relief, with aid. Dr. Robert Lowry, who's actually been on this program before, he has talked about the foundation. I've had him on the show as well. We're partnering with them right now to give them maximum support through all of our platforms. And especially, like I just said, mentioning them on CNN and stuff like that is going to obviously lead to more donations and people helping in the fight. I'm all about humanity. Like, we're losing our humanity here. And I mentioned this to her, and you'll hear it in the clip, and I'll say it again here. You know, I see a 75-pound guy who clearly was at least 150, 160 before he got kidnapped, and he's been in captivity now for over 18 months. I see that, and I feel like horrible for that guy, just like the little kid who's like 40 pounds and is clearly starving and looks exactly like that guy, like the child version of that guy. Like, I have the same level of ire. Like, I'm sick of this and what is happening right now. And what is happening with the U.S.'s response, to be honest with you. That's for another episode. Let's play a little bit more of now Brooke and Peter's back and forth and what they say to each other. I want everybody out there to listen to what they're saying to each other.
Hamas steal the food and use it as a food weapon?
You just spoke for a long time. Let me just say something.
Hamas steal food?
The Palestinians in Gaza are indeed refugees. It's true. They are the descendants, most of them, of families that were expelled from Israel in 1948. So if Gaza is not habitable for them, because Israel has destroyed most of the schools, most of the churches, most of the mosques, most of the bakeries, most of the agriculture, most of the universities, then they should be allowed to return to the places from which they're from, which is not Burundi or Somalia or Rwanda. It's Israel. Right? If you want to give them a place to go out of Gaza, allow them to go back to the places from which their families were expelled.
I think you have a problem with cause and effect. You like to blame Israel for everything. Israel did not destroy their hospitals, destroy their schools.
No.
The schools and the hospitals that I've been to have been used as places for rocket depots, and most of those hospitals are used as Hamas for their headquarters. Hamas is responsible. When you have your headquarters under a hospital and you shoot rockets into a civilian
where is Israel's military
population,
headquarters located?
And you shoot...
I have a question. Where is Israel, the Kiryat? Where is Israel's military locators headquarters? Is it in a remote area?
Israel has military
No, answer the question.
Everywhere.
Where is Israel?
Targets.
No.
Are they
Brooke, you didn't answer my question. Where is Israel's military?
It is in
downtown Tel Aviv. So let me say that.
They have headquarters in Tel Aviv.
You got to let me finish. Israel's military headquarters is in downtown Tel Aviv. Right? Many of the apartment buildings in Tel Aviv house Israeli generals. Under international law, you don't have the right to destroy the schools around Israel's military headquarters or to destroy.
Israel does not shoot rockets from downtown Tel Aviv into civilian populations.
Israel has its military infrastructure deeply embedded within the civilian infrastructure as well. And in international law, it would be a war crime to destroy a hospital or an apartment building in Tel Aviv because an Israeli general is there. Similarly, it is a violation of international law to destroy a hospital or university or school in Gaza just because you believe that there are Hamas.
It is a violation of international law to use civilians as human shields. Can we agree on that?
Yes, and that is.
Do you support the temporary relocation of Gazans so that they are not used?
God forbid I do not. I don't want Palestinians expelled again. The Palestinians were expelled in 1948. You want to expel them again?
No.
That's a war crime, bro.
That's not what I said.
Hang on one sec.
Temporary. You think Israel's going to allow them back if they leave? Come on.
All right.
Again, folks, I don't want you to turn to me for a Middle East commentary. Like, I'm never going to claim to be a subject matter expert in any of this, right? That's not what we do on our show. If you know our show, Can We Please Talk? The tagline of the show is we talk to people who know what they're talking about. If you click on our playlist tabs, you will see that we have a tab devoted to the Israel-Palestine conflict. We've had historians on, professors at UCLA and Princeton. We've had war correspondents from PBS, from G0 Media, from other outlets that have been covering this. We've had former State Department officials on. We've had even a close friend of mine, Jared Fishman, who's a history teacher at a prominent school up in Westchester County. And he's been to Gaza several times, taking his students on trips. And like I said, Robert Lowry from Project Unite Humanity, who has been in the region himself as well and worked at a prominent Jewish school and lost his job because of speaking out about the war in Gaza. So we have devoted a lot to this, and we bring on subject matter experts. I'm not going to sit here and get into, adding on to the battle of what she was saying versus what he was saying. I think Peter did a good job in terms of defending some of the points that she was making that have been repeated by, IDF spokesperson and things like that across other different outlets. So I did want to say, we're going to get into a little bit of my exchange with her, because I want to emphasize again that I did not expect this woman at all. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know who she was. Never heard her. I never seen her. I don't watch Piers Morgan. Apparently she's been on Piers Morgan a bunch. I don't watch some of these other things. I mean, I understand what all these shows are and things like that. But the fact that I was pitted or put on a panel against somebody who is so vile and so evil, I've never felt that before. Like I can only tell you, like, folks, I grew up in the Bronx, and I moved to Westchester County when I was like 14. I've lived in Miami. I've lived in some other places, traveled across Europe, and here in the US. I've been to Canada, Mexico. I don't think I've ever met anybody like this, that when the camera turned on and then she sat down for this segment, because we did a segment before this about the Texas Democrats fleeing the state. She got into a little mini argument there with Bakari Sellers at the onset, right? And it was kind of like, he kind of jumped to cut her real quick, and she was like, I didn't say anything yet. Let me talk for a second. And right there, I picked up a little bit. But this segment right now opened my eyes to one key thing, is that there can never be a two-state solution in that area of the world when there's people like Brooke Goldstein that exist. And more importantly, there's people like Benjamin Netanyahu who exist and are in power that think exactly like Brooke Goldstein. Regardless of what Bibi just said there on Fox News that we played earlier, this has never been about getting the hostages back home. Peter even mentions it there, that I hope it is a bluff, because this is not what the Jewish people want. It's not what they want. Bibi, if you recall, before this started, or actually during this started, I believe, actually before October 7th, there was protest that summer in 2023 in Israel about a Supreme Court ruling that happened there. And then obviously there's been protest after October 7th in terms of getting the hostages back. They felt like the government wasn't doing enough to get these hostages back. So if this is truly about the hostages, diplomacy has to be the negotiating tactic, right? But it hasn't been to this point. It's been hitting Iran, hitting Lebanon, and now obviously blowing up Gaza in so many different ways that over 60,000 people are dead. And different agencies, not Mike Leon, different agencies, okay, are saying that there's a crisis, humanitarian crisis. There's not enough aid that's flowing through, and there's over 60,000 people. Even if you believe the Palestinian Health Ministry, or you don't believe, excuse me, and you think those numbers are inflated, cut it in half. It's still 30,000, 35,000 people that have been killed in all this. I don't agree with that assessment, but even if you cut it in half, it's horrific. And I live on the side of humanity, again, to tie this all up with a bow. Before we sign off here, let me play my exchange with her and what I tried to say about humanity and all this. And we'll play a little bit of Bakari and the other panels. So take a listen.
I think this issue is more nuanced than people give it credit for. And a lot of times we debate this issue on X or on Twitter. And you just saw these two individuals who are dug in, who believe with all their heart and all their might their particular points. And people try to debate this on Fox News, or they try to debate it on X, and they miss it in totality. For example, Democrats, what I would go with is Democrats have to be able to say that, it's very difficult for Israel, and I'm a very pro-Israel Democrat, for Democrats to be able to simply say that Bibi Netanyahu, yes, he's an impediment to peace, but you also cannot negotiate with Hamas, who doesn't believe you have a right to exist. Occupation is something that we can't stand for. Starving Gazans are something that we cannot stand for. However, we have to be able to say that we need to bring every hostage home. It shouldn't be that difficult.
It's not that hard.
For us to have this debate.
We're losing our humanity. There's a lot that Brooke said there. I don't have time to challenge it. I'm also not a Middle East relations guy. This is not going to be Ben Affleck and Sam Steen on Real Time with Bill Maher arguing about that years ago. Look, at the end of the day, I've been working with Project Unite Humanity, projectuh.org. They're helping with the relief efforts. My friend Dr. Robert Lowry, who went to the great school of Rutgers University here. This is something that's very personal to me. As I was telling you off air, that my niece is Palestinian that lives out in Colorado. But that doesn't absolve the fact that October 7th was horrific. That doesn't absolve the fact of what happened in those kibbutzes. That doesn't absolve the fact of that video that came out today of that person that looked like he was about 68 pounds or so walking through those tunnels, as well as the Palestinian children that look exactly like that human being. You should have the same level of ire for who's causing both. I know that Hamas is a terrorist organization and how they came into power in 2007 and took over in that region, even though they were duly elected at first. I know all of that. The West has already admitted that Hamas is a terrorist organization. If we're admitting that we can't negotiate with terrorists, we can't expect the terrorists to be on the up and up. It's Israel that has to do this. And there's only one common denominator in these last 38 years in that entire region. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the one common denominator in all of this. He's from the PLA to every...
The only thing I would disagree with you on is the fact that is the only common denominator. Because yes, you can't diminish the fact that Hamas does not believe Israel has a right to exist. And if we're going to sit here and have this conversation, we have to acknowledge that Israel does have a right to exist.
But they already exist.
And my only point is, I hear you. And
they exist. We know that.
And I hear you. And all I'm saying is that, like, I feel, for me, someone who simply says that Israel has the right to exist, and I believe Israel being an American value, but to watch those pictures of Palestinian children starving, it bothers me. Right, to my core, and I can't empathize with these two.
I can't because
hang on. Can I just put
Can
I put a bonus real quick? And all I'm saying is that there is a space for all of us to simply say that we want this to come to a peaceful resolution where there should not be a decision between inhumanity and cruelty. Correct. And I should be able to say that Benjamin Netanyahu is an impediment to peace, and I should also be able to say that Hamas can go to hell. I should be able to say both of those.
Yeah, but
so hang on, Brooke. I'm going to talk. So I will say this. President Trump has said that he sees starvation in Gaza and it bothers him. He says that the First Lady Melania Trump sees starvation in Gaza and it bothers him. And the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, says he sees starvation in Gaza and it bothers him. If that's the baseline here, then what do you do? And I go back to the question, the original question about you, and you jump in on any subject you want here, but occupation, reoccupation, full reoccupation of Gaza, what would that change? Would that free the hostages, for instance?
So I was expecting to come in here like guns blazing, but I've been totally disarmed by Bakari, like legitimate to my core. Like I'm so moved by everything that you said, like at a very, very deep level. So thank you for that. I will say, I think in the conversation, I agree with Peter. I don't think this is going to happen. And in a way, I'm very bothered that we're talking about something that's obviously not going to happen instead of the footage that came out of Eviatar David starving and digging his own grave. And it seems to me that that was a ploy on Hamas's behalf to show that they controlled the media narrative, that they could get the media to talk about the horrific hunger conditions in Gaza and then get the media not to talk about this starving young man, this innocent life who's literally being starved day by day because they control the mainstream liberal media. And what they've done is they've made it such, they've cut themselves out of the story. And so people there's a fundamental inability to blame Hamas. People will say, I condemn Hamas, but they never blame them because there's this view that the party with less power has zero moral responsibilities, and thus all the moral responsibility is on Israel. And I think we need to reject that kind of thinking because Hamas is to blame for this. And I say that despite having things that we all agree Israel could have done much better and much differently.
Peter, we're going to go to Peter, and then we're taking a break. Peter, go ahead.
100% responsible for the horrific conditions they're holding Eviatar David in, and for the people they killed on October 7th, and for everyone they kidnapped. Absolutely. But Hamas is not responsible for the fact that Israel cut off all food, water, and fuel to Gaza for almost 3 months this year. Israel has to take responsibility for its war crimes, just as Hamas has to take responsibility for its.
All right, you can tell that there's emotions right there. Batia, by the way, is actually going to be on our program in the coming weeks. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. And again, her and I talked off air. I don't want to say what her and I talked about. We did talk about the war, and we talked about one key point that Brooke actually made on the show. And I told Batia off air, if you say that on the show, I'm going to chew your head off, like not literally, figuratively. And then Brooke was the one that ended up making it. And, and so there's emotions with this. Batia is obviously Jewish. Brooke Goldstein obviously is Jewish. Peter's obviously Jewish. I believe John Berman is Jewish. And Bakari and I, obviously, we're not Jewish. I think that's obvious. But that doesn't mean that humanity is escaping, at least me. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the rest of them, folks. If you're like, Mike, you got to do better. I agree with you. I should have researched her. I should have looked her up. I should have been able to counter more. But that's not what I'm on there for. That's what Peter was on there for. I think that's why the producers had Peter on and Brooke. Apparently, they've gotten into exchanges before in the summer. I didn't know about that. Actually, I've been doing Abby's show now for almost a year, but I didn't know about, their dust ups. I've never seen either of them. Never been on a panel with either of them. Been on a panel with Bakari, not Batia. I just met her. So again, that's my fault for not looking that person up and at least finding out where she thinks, because that Lawfare project, like I mentioned, where she is the owner and founder, I've dealt with some of, the people that work there. And again, their masthead, is really like, if you just click on their Who We Are tab over there, they're a global network of legal professionals who contribute their skills, time, and expertise to defending the civil and human rights of Jewish people. So she's out in the open. I don't care about the human rights of other people. I care about the human rights of Jewish people. And that's my fault. I should have looked her up. I should have known that. The conversation was, heavy and emotional and a lot of entrenched talking points. And then there's a lot of things that are easily disproven. My goal to everybody out there watching this, look, this is not about listen to both sides, because one side clearly has on her website, I only care about Jewish people. So you don't want to listen to that, right? You want to listen to somebody that understands the intricacies of this, right? Understands the history of this, because there's some admittance that happens with all of this. When something like this is as contentious as it is, as Layla Malana Allen, who's a PBS special correspondent who's been on this show, she has told me numerous times, when something happens in Gaza, when something happens in Tel Aviv, everybody and their mother has an opinion about it. If there's a civil war right now in Colombia, nobody would have an opinion on it. They wouldn't, outside of obviously people in South America. They just wouldn't. But for some reason, this conflict gets not only over magnified, but everybody gets entrenched in their positions. And I've seen this on a personal level, just from friends of mine who are Palestinian. I mentioned my little niece is Palestinian and lives on Colorado, and her family, but also my Jewish friends that live in New York, that anytime we post something from the show, text me, privately. Why'd you post that? It's from a reputable news outlet. This is not a picking sides thing. This is a reporting the news. So I highly encourage people out there, figure out the sources, the reporters, the correspondents that you're getting the information from. Please do me a favor. Don't get your information from the Brooke Goldsteins of the world, the selective human rights attorney that doesn't care about the rights of other people. Because you can clearly see that on October 7th, Hamas committed a terrorist act, that Hamas killed innocent thousands of people going to a concert, killed people in those kibbutzes, like I mentioned. They inflicted damage and they kidnapped over 200 people, right? Of which there's still about 100 or so outstanding as of this recording. They're a terrorist organization. And as I mentioned in 2005, they were already designated as a militia group. So they were terrorist adjacent. Everyone has known this for the last 20 years, and especially after 2007 when they killed the other political party there in Palestine. Everybody knows this. Everybody has always been saying that. That doesn't mean that you dehumanize the people that are there, that are under this oppressive regime. Brooke can't disassociate herself from that. And so my hope with doing this, and for the people out there, is that you go to other places for news. You can come here. You can go to other stops along the information station, but you can't go to the Brooke Goldsteins of the world. You can't go to the people that clearly say that their one thing But when another group that's affected, that would probably, she would encompass, she's like, nah, I can't do it. Sorry. Can't do those human rights for you. Could do them for somebody else if they have a yarmulke on, but anybody else, she won't do it. This is the first time I've done this. This is probably the last time I've done this, unless somebody else goes nuclear on me on a panel. But I may do more of these because that clip made the rounds on social media from Quentin Quarantino on Instagram, a bunch of accounts. Middle East Eye picked up on the exchange, and it was obviously contentious. And the biggest exchange that they picked up on was Peter and Brooke's exchange. But I wanted to comment on this because I think there needs to be some background for people out there that are always like, these panels, they're manipulated, they're put together so people will argue. It's not really about having discourse and stuff like that. And you know what? I got to be honest. After seeing some of that, I kind of agree a little bit, to a little bit of an extent. I kind of agree because I didn't know who that woman was. And I didn't know that she talks like that and talks over people and tries to steamroll through and wrote down all her IDF or Jonathan Greenblatt talking points. And now she was going to just read them word for word. I didn't know she was going to do any of that. Maybe Peter knew that, which is why he was there, which begs the question, is the show doing that to have two people just argue with each other for 11, 12 minutes? That's not the way to have discourse. And that's why independent media has kind of started to rise and long form content has kind of started to rise. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do me a favor, if you're here and you don't subscribe to the channel, hit subscribe for me. We're going to be back with new episodes of Can We Please Talk. Also, check out all of our tabs here and the TV appearances that myself and my co-host Nick Savary have done, all the different segments, the members of Congress we've had on talking about this, the historians, the correspondents that are out there stationed out in the Middle East that have been covering this. Please do us a favor. Go check out all of that content. Thank you for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.